The computer, well, that was like for email or internet surfing or something, and we had this notion that these devices were kind of bound up with a certain kind of content. That was really our habit. I know a lot has changed since then. And the hardest thing for most people to get their head wrapped around is why would people walk around carrying a television and stuff like that? And so we had a sort of uphill sell there. The question I was always challenged with everywhere I went in the world was, what is the use case? What's the use? Show me the use case for mobile video, because no one could imagine it. You're not going to watch a football game. No, of course you're not. But you might watch highlights from a game. You might watch a movie trailer. Well, I was really gratified last year in February when President Obama was inaugurated. And at the inaugural ball, he took this dance with his wife, Michelle. And if you look at this photo, you'll notice that a lot of the people in the front are using their smartphones to record the video. There's your use case, right? There's your use case. And it's really gratifying to see that happen. But this picture isn't the most astounding picture. The most amazing picture that I saw of this event is this one, where you zoom out and you see that everybody in the room is using their smartphone to record video. We're all producing video now. That's a gigantic shift in a relatively short time. We've all developed this brand new use habit. We don't even think twice about it. And this is increasingly common. Here you have a picture from the Vatican, 2005 when Pope Benedict was announced, and now 2013 when Pope Francis was announced. Look at the difference. It's the exact same spot outside the Vatican. Here you have people, there's a couple of people, you can see them texting or something. One has a phone with a camera. They're taking a still photo. Here, the entire sea of people are recording this. So we're moving into an era very soon where every major event that occurs is going to be recorded not from one point of view, but from hundreds or maybe thousands of points of view. You're going to have this kind of swarm vision of what occurred, which is kind of a neat time that we're moving into. We're producing video at a prodigious pace. So my main first message for you today is that mobile puts me in the media. It gives me an opportunity to participate in a meaningful way. And today the use case for mobile video is quite clear. We use it to communicate with our friends, things like FaceTime. We use it to record those failing moments when you're traveling. Hey mom, look, I'm in Paris and I'm on the Eiffel Tower. You can actually send that video back to your mom. It's an amazing time we live in. We go to concerts now. It's routine for people to stream live from the live events. I mean, that was really problematic for the event producers until they got their heads wrapped around it, but that was a good thing. It's normal for people to wear cameras around their necks and record their lives. It's becoming normal for people to wear eyeglasses like Google Glass and record things that are happening around them. Video blogging or life logging is becoming a real thing. We wear video cameras now when we do sports, when we do extreme sports, when we go skydiving or deep sea diving, snowboarding, base jumping, you name it. There's amazing video from GoPro. If you look at their site, it's riveting to see. It's a perspective you've never had before. And in fact, these little portable cameras now are making it possible for us to bring a viewpoint that you could never see. For instance, in the war in Afghanistan, US soldiers snapped those GoPro cameras on their helmets. And they can show you a viewpoint you've never had before, the POV of a soldier in the front line. And if you look hard enough on the internet, you can also find video from the guys on the other side, the Taliban shooting back at them, which is a little creepy to watch, right? You can see through a sniper sight and so forth. This is a viewpoint we've never, ever been able to have before in history. Recently, I saw something kind of amazing. This is about a year ago, in a remote region in Siberia. Here's a car driving along, and then all of a sudden you see that thing go boom, zooming past. That was a meteorite. This is a part of Russia where, frankly, there aren't very many people. It's a pretty remote part. So you might wonder, how did that occur? How did that occur? Well, in Russia, it turns out you can't rely on police testimony. I guess that's the most polite way to frame it. So as a safeguard, most people have gotten in the habit of putting a little camera on their dashboard, and so they record video no matter where they're going, just so there's a record of whatever might have happened. And in this case, it wasn't just one person who got this video. If you search on YouTube for Russian meteorite, you'll find dozens of videos of this incident that just takes 1 second. It passes across the sky, but literally dozens of people who happen to be driving and who happen, for those reasons, to have a video camera on their dashboard, recorded it for posterity. So this is kind of an amazing time. 10 years ago, that meteorite would have come and gone. Maybe a week later, scientists would have gone to explore it. But today, you can actually see several points of view.
Westbound.
And this is a video from LA. Unfortunately, it's all too common to have this happen on television, a live car chase. But if you look at this video clip, you'll notice there's something unusual about the way it's being shot. You see actually that it's not a TV clip. We're looking at someone shooting this off of their TV set at home. Why would they be doing that? To the west and towards LAX once again, and again, thankfully for the law enforcement Isn't that great? So that's it. Mobile puts me in the media. I get to be in the show. This is not a phenomenon that is limited to a small number of geeks. This is a widespread behavior. Your kids are doing this all the time, even if you are not. For people under the age of 30, 70% of them are sharing video and sharing photos. And for people up to the age of 50, which includes a lot of us, frankly, half of us are sharing video and photos on the internet. So this is a widespread behavior. It's also not limited to the United States or advanced developed countries. It's happening worldwide. So in a weird way, we're kind of being able to extend our human consciousness, our senses, to the whole world. We're able to network our ability to view the world and see it through other people's eyes. It's kind of an amazing thing that's happening. There are an enormous number of apps that have emerged now in the market to give you all sorts of different ways. It's almost impossible to keep up with it because every day there's a few more apps that are introduced. But this is a very, very hot category. These are the video sharing or social video apps that are out there. And if you haven't checked them out, I encourage you to do it. So what we're doing is generating video and content on a prodigious scale. Here's what happens when you have 2.5 billion people connected to the internet. You have 700,000 Facebook status updates every minute, every 60 seconds. That figure, actually 250,000 photos, is out of date. It's now 350,000. I have to change that. 125,000 tweets and 700,000 Google searches. But probably most significantly for the people in this room, a staggering 100 hours of video is uploaded to YouTube every minute of the day. More video is uploaded to YouTube in a month than all broadcast television hours aired since the beginning of TV in the United States in the 1940s. It's a staggering number. Half of the video served on the internet is served by YouTube. There are hundreds of millions of clips. We don't actually know how many clips. I don't know if YouTube knows how many clips they have in their vault. It is just a staggering phenomenon now. When I talk to television groups, I talk to people all over the world. I like to remind them that the tablet computer is not a television. And they all say, well, we know that, obviously. I say, well, it's better than a television. This is a little contentious. But think about it from a consumer's point of view. They have a choice, right? They probably already have a TV, so the real decision they're making is, should I buy a second flat screen? Should I upgrade to a smart TV or something? Or should I buy a tablet? That's the purchase decision, right? They cost about the same amount of money. But actually, the tablet's a much better value because it's not just a video viewing device. You can show it's a photo album. You can show photos. You can take photos. You can edit photos on it. You can also play games. You can also play music. You can compose music on it. In fact, what's important to know about it, it's a truly versatile display in the sense that you can compose, publish, share, and consume content on that tablet. So instead of buying a $500 or $700 black screen that just sits on your wall most of the time and is used maximum 4 hours a day, consumers in huge numbers are opting instead to purchase a tablet which has the same resolution as a high-def TV, but it has so many more uses. You can take it with you, so you can use it throughout the day. So consumers are smart. They're spending money. They're betting with their dollars. They're voting with their dollars, I guess you can say. And if you look at the numbers in the computer industry, it's actually quite depressing for the computer manufacturers because their business hasn't just flattened, it's cratered. All the growth is in tablets. And again, that's occurring on a worldwide basis. It's not limited to the US or the advanced countries. No surprise then that the ownership of television sets is falling. People see less value in TV sets. There's an audience that's growing up that you need to pay attention to. If you spent time with a child who's about 5 years old and you've shown them a tablet computer, you got to do this quick because now they pretty much are all getting exposed to this. But in the past couple of years, you could have that kid. I saw this happen, and it's super fun. Kids of that age, even kids who can't speak yet, they can figure out a tablet interface really fast. They figure it out because it's responsive, right? So they touch it does something. Oh, so that trains them to keep touching and trying it. Doesn't always work. Sometimes they get it wrong. But after a few minutes, they figure it out. And then what happens next is what's amazing. Because once they can do that with a tablet, they start looking at all the other screens in their house. And they start walking up to them. They'll walk up to the television set and touch the TV screen, and nothing happens. And then they turn around and look at mommy, and they say, Mama, I'm broke. Right? So an audience is growing up with the expectation that media devices of all sorts are going to be responsive, personalized, engaging, allow them to manipulate them, participate in some fashion with them. This is why when Tim Cook talks about television, he says, I feel like I went back in time 20 or 30 years when I walk into the living room. It's not clear yet exactly what Apple intends to do in the living room. They have this Apple TV thing. They call it an experiment. I don't know if they're going to come out with a TV. I think that would be a blunder. But clearly, Apple is one of the companies that could do something radical to reinvent the living room experience. Many other companies, Microsoft, Sony, are all focused on that as a problem as well. I think from Tim Cook's point of view, and perhaps the point of view of anybody under the age of 20, when they look at television, they go in the living room today, they say TV doesn't make sense. And think about it, folks. If you were designing it from scratch, knowing what we know about users and technology today, would any sane person design a system that works like this, where the whole country has to sit down at 8 o'clock and watch a show? And if they like the show, well, sorry, as soon as the story gets interesting, we have to stop for a word from our sponsors. And it's not just one word, it's eight messages. So that, it kind of jerks you out of the experience of the show, and then suddenly you're back into the show. That's a really weird thing to do to somebody if you think about it. And if you really like the show, you're really into it, and you want to watch more, oh, sorry, you got to wait for next week. Meanwhile, let's take a look at broadcasting. We set aside a huge amount of spectrum real estate. It's the most scarce real estate in the world. You might consider it the most expensive real estate in the world. And we give it to broadcasters, but only 15% of the households actually tune in to that signal. It makes no sense. Meanwhile, the mobile companies are spending billions of dollars to buy really narrow slices of bandwidth, and they would dearly love to get their hands on it and use it perhaps for a more valuable service. Meanwhile, in the pay TV world, well, right now, the number one complaint you hear from your customers all the time is that we pay too much for more channels than we can possibly ever consume. And yet what's strange is when a new channel comes along, some of the distributors go, we don't have room for that channel on our system, even though there's all kinds of other channels going on there. We're supposed to navigate through 500, I don't know what the number is now, 1,000 channels, with this clunky old interface that was designed in the 1980s. If you think about that, like, what a painful experience compared to the ease of going through your smartphone. The smartphone's teaching us a completely different model of engaging with devices. It's teaching us to raise our expectations. And that means that the expectations are being raised on the television industry right now. And we have to use these clunky old remote controls. It's terrible. How many remote controls do you have? I have like 6 at home. I can never figure out which one I'm supposed to use. And if they're not backlit, you have to like turn a light on. It's just a terrible, terrible experience. Okay, so in the modern era, yes, of course, we have things like DVRs. We have the ability to time shift. We have those OTT boxes. So it's great. If you want the convenience of the modern era, you have to pay extra for that service. That's not a feature. That's like an upgrade. And even then, if you're trying to connect to something like Microsoft, the new Xbox One, and use Smart Glass, it's incredibly cumbersome, right? So most people find that a really frustrating experience. It seems perfectly obvious what people want to do is be able to use their smartphone, which is already backlit, it's already personalized, it already has our content on it, use that as the remote control and get rid of all those other devices. But that would introduce all kinds of chaos into the pay TV ecosystem. Now, if you look at the way we program, this also doesn't make any sense. Every year we spend $250 million making shows here in LA. And the process is crazy, right? We keep everybody on hold. Every agent in town is booking every bit of talent they possibly can until you get a green light, you shoot the pilot, then we do the upfront, and if the show gets picked up, now you have like 6 weeks to get the show on the air. This is an insane way to produce. No wonder then that only 10% of those shows make it on the air, and most of those don't get repeated, don't get a renewal. It's a ridiculous attrition rate. With $250 million, we could literally launch 200 new companies in the internet world. So this is just an astonishing amount of money. The internet companies look at this as a really great waste of money. We ask our advertisers to make a commitment 6 months in advance before they even really know what the shows are all about. But we still can't tell them who's watching at home. We have no idea who actually is watching. I know Nielsen would disagree with me about that, but the fact is, in the internet and in digital platforms, you have empirical data about who's watching what and how long they spend, how much time they spend there, and you actually can track that with great degree of accuracy. And again, that's changing expectations, right? Because on the media buying side, those media buyers now are getting conditioned to having that kind of data, and they're going to start to demand that from you. Perhaps they already are. Now, consumers who say, wait, I want to get off of this crazy thing. I want to watch TV the way I want to watch it. Well, those people are considered pirates, and so we prosecute them. The craziest thing of all is that this system works. Like, that's the most amazing thing. According to Ericsson Consumer Lab, 83% of the population still watches linear TV. So the system kind of works, which is one of the reasons why your business is doing fantastically well. So habits are hard to change. People do have a TV habit. It's our favorite thing to do as a country. And so it's going to take an awful lot to get the nation to shift behaviors, but the behaviors are starting to shift. I don't think we should ask ourselves, is TV being disrupted? People ask that at every conference I go to. It's like, no, obviously not. You guys are doing well, right? So TV hasn't been disrupted yet. The real question is, why has it taken so long to disrupt TV? In the last 10 years, we've seen the music business, the print publishing, magazines, newspapers, every business has gotten absolutely annihilated, reinvented, reconceived, reconfigured, and reinvented completely from scratch by the internet, and yet television still persists in its old way. So people ask me this question all the time. And I think the answer is that there's these two cozy oligopolies that fit together so neatly. The big media and your distribution partners. And I know there's always some friction in those relationships, but you have an awful lot of interests in common. And basically the message is, don't mess this up. It's working pretty doggone well. John Malone said to me, because there's never been a better profit maximization strategy for content ever devised on earth, because no one wants to change it. We're all going like, just keep the music going, please. Nobody wants to sit down. So around this arrangement, you have sort of 4 business tools. Copyright law, which is really used by the big media companies as a veto on innovation. And so they'll litigate companies that they think are somehow using their content in an inappropriate fashion. Regulation is also quite favorable to traditional media companies, so we can work the FCC and change the regulation if there's a startup doing something that we don't like. And then there's always content lockout. So if you're at HBO and you don't like Netflix particularly much, you can just say, no way, no how, I'll never license you content for your new platform. So those are sort of the business rules. And then, of course, there's also a technology box. The technology box is really your classic pay TV structure. There's slotting of channels. There's a screen guide. It's the only way you can find those channels. There's a set-top box. That's the only way you can get to the screen guide. And then behind it all, there's an annuity billing relationship with the customer. And so these are the technical things that that preserve this ecosystem. So that's worked incredibly well. In fact, it's worked so well as the internet has started to kind of disembowel and change and reinvent many other businesses. It's worked so well that, like any closed ecosystem, it starts to take on kind of a strange dynamic. I used to work with Tom Freston when we were launching On. I would talk to him a lot, and he said, Rob, the way to think about TV, it's a locked box exploding with cash. I love that expression. It's such a nice way to think about television, right? It's just going, there's so much cash pouring through that business. Of course, don't think the internet companies don't see that. They're like, wow, look at all that cash. So you have some bubbles happening. I think what we're doing is by keeping this closed ecosystem so tightly locked down, that we're starting to inflate certain things. Sports rights have gone up tremendously fast. You know this. The guys at Turner Sports know this, right? So it's kind of a signal to me that we're in a bubble when, in the worst economic recession of our adult lifetime, the value of every sports franchise doubled, and in some cases, really bad teams went up even more than that. So you look at that, you go, well, that's definitely sort of an aberrational time. You could also argue that bundling, this idea of taking lots of channels and bundling them together and sort of ramming them down the throat of a distributor, and extracting a fee for all of them, you could argue that that's a kind of bubble as well. And if TV does get unbundled, you'll find there's a lot of channels that really can't exist in the wild on their own. For instance, not to take a pot shot at a rival, but MSNBC makes $400 million a year even when there is an election going on. People only watch that channel every 4 years. And so they have this sort of weird viewing pattern, but they're able to extract that kind of revenue out of the cable system, out of the pay TV ecosystem. So because of the bundling, because of NBC's bundling. You can argue that retransmission's a bubble. Certainly the way they're cranking up the fees for retransmission consent, this strikes me as a bubble. And if Aereo prevails in the Supreme Court hearing, that could actually change really fast. And you'll find that those broadcasters are going to find themselves in jeopardy. Because that's pure profit that'll just disappear. And they're banking on getting to like $12 billion in retrans fees. Advertising, I think, in broadcast at least, is kind of a bubble. I still think you guys deliver value in the pay TV ecosystem, but broadcasting, I have arguments with people on TV all the time about this, but I show them this chart. I say, look, here's a chart from 1980 to 2011. The blue line shows you the CPM for the average day part on broadcast TV. The orange line shows you their share, basically who's watching. And you'll see that that's dropped by 50%, while that's gone up fourfold in the last 30 years. It doesn't make any sense. I argue you can't continue to sell less for more forever. Eventually, that's going to come to an end. That's the definition of a bubble. Today, the big 6 media companies are more dependent on your business than ever. You're comprising what I'm guessing that you contribute about 60% of the total revenue to Time Warner. I may be off by that. The only company that's not as exposed to this is CBS, because they're kind of dependent on other media types. But generally speaking, this is like kind of the engine room that's keeping these giant media conglomerates going. Motion pictures, they really don't make money anymore. It's a weird business. It's sad, actually. It's a little bit like running a grocery store. In a good year, you have a 3% margin. In a bad year, sorry. Now, there's a lot of news that's popping up, right? So there's a lot of people speculating about what's going to happen with television. You see a story like this in the Hollywood Reporter from time to time talking about subscriber erosion. Generally, people say, well, no, there's no exodus. People seem to like pay TV. They seem to keep subscribing. There isn't really any sign of cord cutting. It's not so clear about this cord never proposition, where younger people never sign up. Maybe that's a thing. Maybe they'll sign up later. I was talking to some of your colleagues at breakfast this morning. They said, well, when they have kids, watch. they'll sound probably accurate. But stories like this are out there, right? So that's kind of lingering in the back of the analyst's mind, people who look at television. And then you start to see data like this that shows that as you look at younger and younger audiences, here's 18 to 24, and that's watching television, live TV. You can see that their behavior pattern is significantly different from older people. So certainly the habit of watching live television is a habit that old people have. Maybe it's a baby boomer habit. So these are things we do need to be concerned about. Because you have so many bubbles, and you can debate with me about some of those things, if they're bubbles or not, but when you have so many bubbles, I think your television set should come with a warning label on it that says, caution, under extreme pressure, it could explode at any time. So outside of the TV industry, outside of the pay TV industry, you have any number of companies that are trying to dismantle your walled garden brick by brick, right? So this is another dynamic that's happening. In the living room, you've got a lot of competition. A lot of times people frame it simply. They'll say, well, it's basically TV versus the internet, which I think is a little simplistic. Or sometimes they'll just say it's television versus YouTube. That's really simplistic, right? That is definitely one dynamic. It's like, well, here's a lot of video, and it's priced completely differently, and it's available on demand, and it's shorter. It's, there's a lot of different attributes to that internet video, and so they are developing an audience and a habit and so forth. So there is a kind of a rivalry there to control an audience behavior. But then you look at this, you go, gosh, even within the TV industry, we have all this tension, right? So broadcast networks always have been challenged by pay TV channels. And then channel owners always have those renewal battles with the distributors. And cable is kind of jockeying back and forth with satellite and telco, and so there's that friction as well. So there's a lot of friction in your ecosystem, and even the sports companies are, they're kind of gaming the system here to try to extract more benefit. So you have those dynamics within the TV ecosystem, and then you have all these hardware companies who are desperate for a way to differentiate or add a little value or find some extra margin, because the TV business, trust me, I worked at Sony, it's a terrible business, hardware. And so they're all trying to find a way to differentiate, so that puts them in conflict. And so, for instance, the middle one here is worth looking at. The game consoles versus set-top boxes versus the OTT boxes and these so-called smart televisions. That's an interesting tug of war. Everybody's basically trying to replicate the same functionality, make it accessible to consumers, make it easier to get out to the internet from a television set and so forth. And then you also have this kind of challenge as well. It's, well, if we have scheduled programming on demand, there's a conflict, right? I can't watch 2 shows at one time. That creates all kinds of problems within a company, a challenge there, the programming. I think ultimately you can summarize all this by saying there are forces at work that are seeking to give consumers more power over how they watch TV. And then there's kind of a conservative force that says, actually, just sit down and watch TV and stay subscribing and don't get off that couch and don't change channels, right? So that's the kind of core dynamic behind all of this. But I think this is characteristic of the time. This is what a lot of people are looking at. What I would say is that outside of the television industry, the rate of innovation is accelerating. It's a really important point. And by the way, this is not just limited to TV or media even. This is happening in every technology-driven field, whether it's retailing or medical technology, biology. We have this kind of exponential increase as we apply computer power. Innovation happens much, much faster. So that's just a characteristic of digital in general, not just digital media. But in the meantime, the TV industry really stopped innovating like 10 years ago. I'm hard-pressed to think of a great innovation, a great breakthrough that's come in television. The programming is better than ever. We're in a golden age for programming. But in terms of TV as an experience, it hasn't really changed much in 10 years. You could say that the DVR and on-demand were the last 2 big innovations in television. Oh, maybe high def. But that was like 10 years ago. Okay, so let's look forward. 2020, it's only 6 years away. Sounds like it's, 2020. It's like, wow, it sounds like Star Trek, but it's only 6 years away. What will TV be like then? That's a good question, right? Because if you talk to your digital team, they'll tell you it takes about 18 months to really figure out a new space. And it can take 18 months to launch a new service. So let's say you were focused on launching something ambitious. It could take you the better part of 3 years to go from like the meeting, the discussion, the business modeling, and so forth, to an actual deployment at scale, about 3 years. So 6 years isn't very far away. What will TV be like then? If you ask Glenn Britt, he says television doesn't even exist anymore. There's just these viewing devices. Everything that has a screen could be a TV signal, could show a TV signal. Robert Kinsella, who is the head of content at YouTube, said this at MIP TV last year, and he managed to piss off everybody in the audience there. His view is basically you're going to be watching it. You're going to be watching video, but the video you want to watch is going to be served from a computer. It'll be served from the internet. And then David Karp, whose company Tumblr was recently acquired by Yahoo, his viewpoint is 5 years from now, most of the content that we watch won't be created by a handful of professional creators paid for by Hollywood studios,
but instead it'll probably be created by people like you and me. That's kind of that swarm vision concept that I was sharing. Now he knows, right? Because Tumblr is the fastest growing microblog site in the world. He's got 170 million people posting content. So he speaks with some credibility on this topic. So that's what their view is 5 years out. Let's look back a little more than 6 years. So let's look back 7 years. So it's 2006. It's not that long ago, right? But it's incredible. If you look back at 2006, what companies, think about it in your mind. Try to think of like the leading, like the coolest companies, the most dominant companies in 2006. Here they are, Vodafone in mobile. They were like the world leader. MySpace, that was the big social network, remember? They'd been bought by Fox. Electronic Arts was a colossal player in the game industry. Microsoft had total control, right? They exercised hegemony, not just over the desktop, but also the browser. And Nokia and mobile phones. Today, these companies are a shadow of what they were just a few years ago. It's astonishing how much can change in a short period of time. If you also go back to 2006, think about this. Since 2006, we've had all these innovations. The iPhone, Android, tablet computers, the whole app economy that comes with them, the idea of mobile video, okay, we pioneered it a few years before that, but didn't really get up to speed. The same thing is true. Netflix existed as a DVD by mail. They were like Blockbuster mail order back in those days. But the streaming service hadn't been launched. It didn't get launched really in a big way until 2008 or 2009. YouTube was a fledgling service that was very, very tiny. It was a shadow of what it is now. Facebook existed, but it was only for college students, and it was about 100 million users, not the 1.2 billion that they have today. So the whole social concept emerged. And then down here, this is actually quite an interesting area that I love to think about, love to talk about, this idea of socially backed projects where people get together, they crowdsource, they create things together. They actually will reach into their pocketbook and back a new concept, even back a new film. Do you know at the Sundance Film Festival, the last 2 years, more than 10% of the films submitted to the Sundance Film Festival were crowdfunded on Kickstarter? That's people saying, I like this idea, I'd like to see that movie. I'll give you $10 in advance before you even have a crew, before you've rolled one frame of video. I'll give you $10 up front because I'd like to watch that movie. It's kind of an interesting concept, brand new concept. Didn't exist. It actually didn't even exist in 2008. So CES this year was kind of a turning point. When you go to CES, it's always kind of the same. It's like, wow, totally overwhelming, giant hall. It's like the biggest Best Buy you've ever been to. Thousands of things for your iPhone, right? So it's a little bewildering. It can kind of make you nauseous, in fact. And every year, the consumer electronics companies are trying to find a way to convince you to buy another TV. So a couple years ago, buy a 3D TV. Then last year, it was a smart TV. This year, it's a 4K TV, a bendable TV, a curved TV. Whatever, just buy a TV, please, right? Please, don't commoditize us. So there's an era of desperation there. Dish announced that if you sign up for Dish Network, they'll give you a free iPad, which is kind of like handing out bullets at your own court-martial. Meanwhile, there were a couple turning points. So this story came and went, but a lot of people didn't pay attention to it, but I think it's pretty important. So WWE said, yeah, pay TV. You know what? We think we have a better idea. We're going to launch our own paid channel, direct-to-consumer on the internet. And with a rabid fan base, they can actually pull this off. Something for your sports guys here to pay attention to. I think they're probably keenly interested in that. But really, the big story, I think, coming out of CES is that Netflix won. Netflix won. Last year they got a great distinction. People used to poo-poo internet content, right? They used to dismiss it and say it's a bunch of kids doing skateboard tricks on YouTube. Last year, I got this package in the mail. I was so stunned I couldn't hold my camera steady when I took a picture of it. This is my Emmy voting package from the TV Academy. Netflix was nominated for 14 Emmys and they won one. So that's actually kind of amazing for House of Cards, proving that internet companies, pure play internet distribution, can actually deliver programming at the same level, at the same quality level as television. I guess there never really was any reason why they couldn't do that, but now they've proven it. I think going forward, you're going to see that become increasingly common, where Netflix and all of their competitors are offering quality programming. But they announced something even more important. They're going to have 4K streaming before any TV system on the planet can have it. That's a pretty big deal. Their commitment to quality is so great. They had many announcements related to this about how they expect to deliver the very best video signal, a superior video signal to what you can get from your pay TV service. That's an extremely important message. And of course, with the internet, the momentum never stops, right? So the pressure to innovate is constant. Amazon also announced that they have a 4K initiative as well. So you're going to see these two groups competing to continue to elevate the quality threshold. So the question is, do you expect your kids to watch TV the way you did? Seriously, I mean, do you really think kids are going to sit there in the future and watch linear scheduled programming in pattern, interrupted with commercials every 5 or 10 minutes, with this ancient gear, these set-top boxes that are 10 years old and remote controlled, fumbling around? It just doesn't make sense, right? We're raising an entirely new generation with a completely different expectation. It's actually worth thinking about those generations. We're the baby boomer generation, so we had some innovation. We had color TV, movie of the week. We got pay TV, right? Multi-channel television is something that we got to experience. Then our kids, or the Generation X, they got the digital stuff, the DVDs and the DVRs, and bigger packages, right? So giant satellite packages, unlimited channels, and so on. And they also got BitTorrent, right? So they were the ones who did the downloading. But now you have this generation, the millennials. They watch YouTube, mobile video, Slingbox, so they can move stuff around, and all those Slingbox imitations. The OTT boxes, they use iTunes and Netflix. They actually stream more content than they download. They're not really heavy users of BitTorrent, even. It's a different behavior pattern. You'll see a distinction between those two groups. I think these are the guys to pay attention to, because I think they're going to shape the video experience of the future. I'm hesitant to use the word television, because I don't know what device they're going to actually look at it on. More than 10 years ago, Steve Jobs encouraged us to think different, right? That was his message. Not great grammar, but it's a good message. Think different. And I think the problem for the TV industry has been, the message consistently has been, think the same, right? Think inside the box. It's astonishing. One of the studio heads said that to his team a few years ago. Think inside the box. Don't change. I don't want to hear your new idea for disrupting TV. And too often we send that signal, right? So somebody wants to come in, stop in your office and ask you a question and say, what about this thing? Or what's our strategy? Are we going to be on that device? Are we not going to be on that device? What's our relationship with that company going to be? And we don't want to hear about it because frankly, we got too many things to deal with. We're putting out fires all day long. We're trying to run a mature business. I totally understand. I sympathize. I was one of you guys in the past. But I think it's really important to think, if you shut that conversation down, what you're really saying is in this place, we don't think different, we think the same. Now, in a completely unrelated industry, in the live events industry, I spoke to the CEO. I did a talk for the CEO of the biggest company in the live events business. And I asked him what his concerns were. And he said, my biggest number one concern is that there are people in my organization aged 30 or 20. And they look at the senior vice presidents and the vice presidents above them, and they see these people are rigid, inflexible thinkers who are wedded to the old ways. And those younger people realize they will never advance through this organization. So instead, they're going to quit and go start a startup company that is aimed directly at our weak spots because they know where they are. That's their fear. That's something to think very hard about. When that person comes in your office next time wants to talk, maybe you want to grab a cup of coffee and hear what they have to say. So my message to you is think disruptive, right? Think disruptive. And you've got the ultimate role model in Ted Turner. The guy never thought in a normal way. That was his complete modus operandi, was to think disruptive about everything. He never quite had enough capital to do the stuff that he took these crazy bets. And he had to work really hard every time he did one to make sure it happened. But he was incredibly successful. A Brinksman, no doubt. No doubt. But a true disruptor. And he wasn't hesitant to do it. In fact, if you read his book, one of the things you'll take away from that book is that he spent hours and hours and hours thinking about problems and trying to find a different angle. And he writes about it. Even as a young boy in school, he tried to find a way where he could make it happen, even if he didn't have the right skill, even if he wasn't the best sailor and so forth, if he didn't have the best sailboat. I mean, that's just how he was wired. And this is the way you need to think. So every company has blind spots. Mature businesses have them. I'll give you for instance. So when I show this picture to someone in the TV industry, I say, what do you see? They say, well, I see 3 screens, a big one, a little one, and a really small one. But Rob, we got it covered. Our distribution guys, they're doing deals. We're selling to all those screens, right? So we're covered. When you show this to a disruptive thinker, somebody outside the TV industry, they see something you don't see. They see an invisible layer of software that unites all these devices. And with that invisible layer of software, you can do previously unthinkable things. You can browse and find, download, and pay for content in a completely new way through your mobile phone. And of course, you can manage it and organize it, create your own playlists, organize your own experience, basically create your own channel, create your own programming. And you can use these devices to share it with your friends, to talk about it, to recommend it, and to promote it, and actually do marketing on behalf of the services that you're participating in. So they see it in a completely different way. And so now we have this new trend where people can consume media on their own terms. How many people have used AirPlay on their Apple phone or Apple iPad? Great. Okay, that's super. It's pretty cool, isn't it? It's kind of magical the first time. You're like, really? That's not going to work. And it does. It's like, hey, my pictures are on the TV set. It's amazing. Like you can take your media to your friend's house and connect to their Apple TV and show. It's kind of cool. Like, so you get a movie night at some place. So new media require us to think differently. I think that's the most important point. You can't take the thought process that we have in our old businesses and apply it to this new medium. It's too fluid, it's too early, it's too young, and it works on completely different principles. Just so I understand who I'm talking to, how many people in this room work in digital media? Okay, so quite a few, quite a few. And for the people who didn't raise your hands, what do you do for a living? Because, you know, if you think about television, the script is written on a computer, the budget's put together on a computer, principal photography is done digitally, it's edited and posted all digitally. Your satellite uplink facility is digital. The downlink's digital. The TV set at home is digital. At what point is it not a digital product? You have to begin to think differently about your core business, because what's happened quietly, stealthily, is that digital media has enveloped the entire TV industry, and you are now part of that digital ecosystem. You might not think of it, and maybe the old distribution patterns and the old business models exist for a while. Maybe they'll continue for quite a while. We don't know. What you need to recognize is you are now on this playing field with a lot of other companies. The rest of my talk is going to be aimed at helping you think different. I want you to really rethink everything about your business. Rethink time. That's a big one. Rethink time. In the internet, we think about real time. TV is a very seasonal business. It still is. We move at this languid pace. We have a fall season. We have a pilot season, you know, and it's seasonal, right? Companies like Twitter, this is really what Twitter's great contribution to the conversation is they taught us to think about real-time sentiment, real-time commentary. What's happening right now? What are people thinking right now? That's their franchise. That's what's unique to them, and that is what they own. Your news group understands this very well. So it's CNN. They're already on top of it. Those guys are actually quite superb. I don't know if there's any folks from CNN in the room today, but I am deeply impressed by them. I've known folks there since the 90s when Mitch Lazar was one of the first guys to put stuff on mobile phones. And so CNN's always been at the forefront of digital. They've always had a successful web presence. And they understand this concept that we're programming the permanent present. But the real time I want to talk to you about is a little different, because when we shift over to a totally IP-based network, you're going to start to see all the attributes of the internet come into the TV business. This is extremely different from the way we do business today in television. Because real-time marketing is really happening. I think it's going to merge with television. I don't know when this will occur, but it will certainly come, because your advertisers are going to demand it. And that means that there'll be behavioral targeting, where you can dynamically insert an ad that's specific to certain households, and a different ad will be seen by other households. There'll be real-time auctions, so that they'll be able to monitor your audience in real time and buy that audience in real time or not. Maybe you'll be measured by performance. How many people do you convert to a paid proposition? You'll have new engagement metrics, maybe new opportunity for people to opt in and be tracked in their behaviors. Maybe not. It's a little speculative. What I know is that real-time bidding, as a part of what media buyers are focused on, is increasing, and it's increasing really fast. A few years ago, I spoke to one of the biggest media buyers. I asked him about real-time bidding. And he said, you know, right now it's 15% of our spend. Last year it was 10. Next year it'll be 20, maybe 25. But I can see a time where it'll be 50% or more. This will come to television, I guarantee you. If you're not familiar with the dynamics I'm talking about, you must understand real-time bidding and this real-time economy around advertising and audiences, because it's going to radically change the way you sell your proposition. You're going to have to rethink the upfront. You're going to have to rethink the sales cycle. You're going to have to rethink sweeps. All of this stuff, how we measure our audiences, package them up, and sell them, this seasonality will be gone. You will be in a real-time world where you're measured in real time and you're selling audience in real time. Another thing to rethink is data. And we hear the word big data all the time. Right? It's like an IBM campaign. So usually if you hear big data, it's like, awesome, IBM's going to do a big buy on a Turner network. We love big data. But we don't really think about big data in the TV business, right? Like, big data is not really part of what we do. We have Nielsen for that. How many people saw the film or read the book Moneyball? Fantastic. You got to do it if you haven't. It's a must-read. It's super fun, easy book. Michael Lewis, you know, the movie's actually fun to watch as well. In the movie, Jonah Hill is a quant jock. Brad Pitt is the star. He's running the sports team. They're lagging. He doesn't have a big budget. Jonah Hill's idea is, why don't we do some quantitative analysis on each player, the skill set, and maybe we can do some predictive analysis where if we combine players in different ways, we can get a different performance. I'm killing the story if you haven't seen the film. There's a lot of resistance, right? The old-time guys, the scouts from the old, they quit and discussed. They're like, that's not it. This is an art. It's not a science. And so, long story short, of course it works. It becomes successful. It doesn't just transform baseball. It does. It actually transforms every sport. In fact, we live in Moneyball world now. So quant jocks are starting to rule everything. Now that we have big data, all of our trading, Wall Street is completely dominated by quantitative analysis. So is venture capital. Venture capital used to be a gut call. You know, a VC would sit down and say, I like that team, and I think they've got it, right? There's all this gut instinct stuff. Now you talk to a VC, and they say, bring us your analytics. We'll take a look at your patterns, and we'll see if we're interested in your business. In fact, don't even bother seeing us. We'll look at your analytics on our own, and then we'll come find you if we think you've got an interesting business. Totally reversed. Advertising is dominated now. And this is important for you, right? Because it's not just the guys from the internet. Increasingly now, ad agencies, the media buyers, are putting the head of digital in charge of the whole media buying company because they want to bring this kind of quantitative analysis into how they buy media across all platforms, including yours. Healthcare is turning into a total quantitative analysis business. Have you heard about the quantified life? This was a big thing at CES this year and also the previous year. These little devices that measure your life and turn your life into a kind of like statistical game, and so you can measure how many steps you took, you know, and how many heartbeats you had, and so forth. So we're starting to measure everything. And if there's any programming people here, I'm sure they're sitting there going, well, that's never going to happen in TV, right? Wrong. It's clearly coming. One place you're going to start to see it is in the A/B test. And I'm sure some folks who are familiar with that, the digital guys for sure, but there's probably some people who aren't, so I'll explain what I mean. An A/B test is a very simple concept. Basically, you have traffic, you take 100% of the traffic and you route half of it to version A and half of it see a new version, the test version, version B. And so, for instance, on a web page, if you go to the Huffington Post, if you have two computers, open them up and go to the exact same page, and sometimes you'll see two different headlines, which is really weird. What they're doing is they're A/B testing. So computer A is getting one headline, computer B is getting a headline, and they see what the bounce rate is, how many people bounce off that page. So if you don't stick around, they know that didn't work. And so what they do is they can measure the performance, and they can see which one got a better performance, and they immediately kill the version that didn't work, and they begin to iterate again on the version that did. And so this is a way to test. It's almost like a high-speed version of Darwinism, right? You're testing an idea, and you can test anything this way. It's used by a number of companies. Google kind of made it a standard. They use it for every single thing. They don't like to have emotional discussions at Google. They don't like to have those kind of debates where people are like, I feel like it should be like that. They don't like that word feel. So instead, they like science. So they say, let's just A/B test everything. I mean, you could say it's a little robotic, right? I mean, it works for them. I don't know if that's the best example. But if you look at the email marketers, the e-commerce companies, and increasingly retail commerce companies are using A/B testing. Just 2 days ago, I was in New York to launch a new venture at the Retail Federation, the National Retail Federation, big show in New York. This used to be like, new signage and displays and stuff, kind of old school stuff for retail. Now it's like CES or Comdex. It's basically a computer show. You've got Oracle there, IBM, all these technology companies are selling technology into retail shops so that retailers like Best Buy can track where people are going in their stores. They see a heat map of the traffic in their stores, and they can do all kinds of amazing stuff. I saw the ability to measure audiences, like literally they can scan your face, they can recognize as you come in. A little creepy, especially after this NSA stuff. It's a little Orwellian, and they're aware of that. That's a big concern that they have. But you're starting to see this kind of data analytics, and more importantly, predictive analytics, applied even in a retail environment. Now, how it touches content? Well, game companies like Zynga, they don't design games in the old way. This is why they were so disruptive when they were successful for 5 minutes. They were designing by algorithm, right? They were using data to design and tweak the game, and they could move, if there was a difficult obstacle, it was too hard, too early, they'd move it back further in the game until people were a little bit better at it. And as I mentioned, the Huffington Post has been using this since at least 2007, where they test everything, photographs, headlines, associated content, and so forth, and they're constantly testing. So you have this whole new group that is there driving editorial decisions based on performance. It's a crazy idea. I believe it's going to come to television. And why I think it's going to come is because of these guys. You know this, right? You know that Netflix is a data-driven company. And all their programming decisions, like the idea of bringing Arrested Development back from the grave, it's all based on user data. They know what people like. They know what people want to watch. And so they can make a very educated guess. It's not really even a guess. It's more predictive. They actually have the data to back up their programming strategy. Also, the way they package and present content is all backed up by user data. So this is a radical notion, right? People want to watch all the shows back to back in a binge viewing experience. Well, they have the data to back up that is actually what their customer wants, and they're there to serve. They're the most customer-focused video company on earth. And they also have this amazing algorithm for making recommendations. This is actually from The Atlantic. These are not real. Violent thrillers about cats for ages 8 to 10. There was a great article last week in the Atlantic that broke down Netflix's algorithm for recommendations, and it's such a great article. I encourage you to check it out because The guy started out with the assumption that this was not going to be a very complex algorithm. And as he got deeper and deeper into it, he realized that they have 76,000 categories, 76,000 categories. They've actually done like a taxonomy and an ontology of every title in their catalog. And then they can see what you as a user like, which of those categories appeals to you. Maybe Irreverent Reunited Lover werewolf movies. You got to check out the article. It's very fun. I'm not going to dwell on it, but what I want to make you clear on is that programming decisions are becoming data-driven decisions. There's a second part of big data that you really need to understand. I'm going to introduce this phrase. What is your proprietary data asset? It's a really important phrase. Take this away with you. What is your proprietary data asset? I want you to ask yourself that. And when people bring you new ideas, I want you to think about that. Maybe that's a new yardstick you can use. I first heard this when I went to pitch Union Square Ventures, the very successful firm in New York. And I brought them a new business idea, and they passed immediately. It was super polite. They said, oh, sounds like a very interesting business. We're not going to touch it. All right, I was a little disappointed by that, but they were cool. They said, it doesn't fit our criteria. I said, what is your criteria? They said, we're looking for businesses that have a proprietary data asset that grows based on usage. These are some of the companies they built. Tumblr, Kickstarter, Foursquare, Etsy, Twitter. What these companies all have in common is that the more users they get, the more data they get. And that data is unique to that service and actually makes that service better. You could think of Netflix in the exact same way. As they get more people, they get more intelligent because they track the data of all the people, all the decisions that they're making, all the stuff they're writing and commenting and contributing, and those things grow, and that becomes a proprietary asset that's almost impossible to replicate. If you go to Amazon to buy a book, you've experienced this yourself, right? You go to Amazon and they've got the book description that comes from the publisher, the book cover, anybody can have that, the ISBN number and all the related stuff, that anybody can have. That's commodity content. What Amazon does is they have all those amazing reviews. People who really read books, who really care about books, who can write really, really well, and they have the best user reviews. That's how you buy stuff on Amazon. And it's not just books, of course. It's every product in your store. So they're adding a layer of proprietary data on top of a commoditized product. That's what makes them such a valuable service. That's what allows them to charge more for their service. So you'll hear this comment a lot in the future. Data is the new oil. My colleagues who fancy themselves as futurists use that phrase. Data is the new oil. What they mean by it is that data is this gigantic resource that we've barely begun to tap. And you can literally mine it, extract some value from it. So the metaphor is an okay metaphor. But not all data is created equal. So let's compare the kind of data that you create in the TV business to the kind of data that's created by an internet site, whether it's YouTube or Foursquare or Facebook. So here's a TV channel and here's a web service. The type of data you create is a TV series. The type of data that the web service creates is user-generated content, user data, which in the past we would dismiss, right? We'd say, like, it's a lot of crappy stuff. It doesn't have any value. Oh, so wrong, so wrong. Because your content is very scarce and it's also very expensive to produce. Their content is abundant and free-flowing and it grows and grows and grows and it's totally free. Your marketing costs, well, making the show is one thing, getting people to tune in and discover it is another, so you have to spend again. But on an internet service, they don't have to spend because it's all viral. It's free marketing. People, by using the service, are marketing the content. They're marketing that data asset and making it more valuable. Security. Unfortunately, video is a bad product for the internet. It's easily stolen. It's easily shared. But the user data that the internet companies create, that's all on a server. You can't really steal it. Like, you can't steal the data out of Facebook. That's Facebook's data. People freely contributed it. They voluntarily created that thing that is Facebook. They're just the interface and a giant database. The value of a TV show is rather quickly depleted. And the value of internet data, user data, it's ever growing. It's ever growing. And this allows us to have completely different business models. In the video business, you want to basically capture as much of that revenue as you possibly can early on, and then extend that window as long as you can. But the windows are collapsing. This is what's happened in the film business. It's so hard. Meanwhile, in the web service, you open up your platform. You create an API, a programming interface, so that other developers can build new experiences that get new users and get more data and make your platform and your data asset ever more valuable. This is a different way of thinking. This is how I want you to think about data in the future. We have to rethink channels. This is a horrible thing to say to a cable channel company. But it's the fact, right? Consumers under the age of 30, they look at TV really differently. They don't know, kids don't know what CBS and NBC even stand for. And they don't get the distinction between a broadcast network and a cable channel. So those distinctions from the past are being erased really quickly. People are gravitating to the show as brand. And I understand brand strategy is an important one for you, but I would argue that most cable channels, not necessarily yours, but many cable channels have degraded their channel brands at the expense of shows, and that's a real problem for them. That's going to be a real problem because people are gravitating to the show. As long as the show works, that's great, but you're not going to get any of the lead-in benefit or the programming benefit. So as we look out into the future, we start thinking about unbundling. You think about separating the content from the container. You know, the whole TV industry and all media was built on fixed media. We were built on fixed media, right? So in the music business, it was a DVD, it was a CD. In the movie business, it was a DVD. And in the book business, it was actually a book. And now that you can liberate that content, you can actually kind of suck the good stuff out of the middle of it and leave that hardbound thing behind. You can leave that disc or that book behind and just take the data out of it. That's put us into some jeopardy with our business models. We don't know how to sell just pure content. We've only sold containers around the content, but now the content's being unbundled from the containers, being separated and sold in a completely different way. We have to really rethink channels. I would say that your programming team is going to need to develop something different from a channel-centric point of view to an omni-channel point of view, where they think about all the touch points of a programmer. And they have to do this at the earliest stages of development. When you're talking to the creators, when you're talking to the producers who are thinking of the shows, you have to get a commitment from them to support the brand across all channels. I know producers want to do this. I'm sure you're already having that experience yourselves, but you have to build this into your budgets. You can't do it as an afterthought. And too frequently in TV, all the other uses are treated like an ancillary. It's an afterthought, something that we do later. We don't have enough budget. We can't really do that. The channels that have done this well, Bravo, by the way, has done a superb job of baking multi-channel or omni-channel into all their programming. It's working extraordinarily well. You can learn from them. The best example I can find isn't a TV company. It's Red Bull, who, interestingly, are kind of going from being a fizzy soft drink seller to a kind of media business. Like, that's what they would tell you that they are. They're in the media business now. And they did an extraordinary thing a year ago, which is worth paying attention to. This is the Red Bull Stratos campaign. Did you hear about it? You watched it? Yeah, so a lot of people heard about it. It's a very cool thing. This Austrian daredevil named Felix Baumgartner, he decided he wanted to do the world's highest free fall. So he went up in space. I'm not kidding you. That's the picture from the thing. A giant hot air balloon, but I mean like gigantic. You know, it went up in the stratosphere. And then he jumped off. Look at that. Okay, look at this. Look at that view. Right? That's unbelievable. Well, it was as big a risk for Red Bull. This project cost them somewhere between $5 and $8 million. It took almost 5 years to actually bring it to fruition. It's a big undertaking for a soft drink company. And they couldn't advertise it in the way that we would advertise an event. They couldn't do tune-in promotion. They don't have a channel. They couldn't do like a lead-in or put it on a hot night when there's an audience there. They don't have those things. They also don't have traditional media, really. I mean, if you look at how they spend their dollars, that isn't where they're spending it. So how did they go about doing it? Well, they did some amazing things. So they had 1 million people who were highly active, and they messaged them. Because they had tried to launch this thing. You know, sometimes they would scratch because of the weather. They had to set it back a day or two. And finally, they said, OK, Felix is doing it. We're going. Today is the day. So they let their 1 million super fans know about that. Each fan, on average, messaged people twice. So maybe they posted once on Twitter and once on Facebook or something like that. On average, each person reached 90 people. So they reached 90 million people with that social outreach, which drew 8 million viewers to the live event, which is actually pretty amazing. If you think about viewership of broadcast television even today, that's a sizable audience. Like, that's a great return on investment. But that's not all. They also got 2 million of those people, so a quarter of them signed up to be subscribers. They joined this group up here. So they tripled the size of their core group. And then, oh yeah, by the way, every major media outlet covered the thing, so they got press and coverage from traditional media as well around the world. So they got this incredible knock-on benefit because it was called the Red Bull Stratos campaign. This is a textbook example of how to launch a great big programming event, kind of a blockbuster programming event, without a channel, without tune-in, without any traditional media support. It's astonishing. I don't know of a better case study. If you know of one, let me know, because I'm looking for them. I don't think there are that many out there right now. Rethink your competition. So your colleagues at HBO did something kind of cool. Did you see this announcement? They're going to preview their new series of girls on YouTube first. I've been urging TV channels to do this for a long time. The channels that have done it, in Europe, a few channels have done this, and what they find is ratings go up, not down. It's always the big fear. It's like, oh, we put it on the internet first, it's going to kill ratings. Not at all. What happens is the core fans see it, and they tell everybody, and if you do it with the timing is the trick. You have to time it just right so there's enough time for the viral buzz to build up, and then what happens is the night of, there's great anticipation, there's great tune-in, and so it can actually work. But what they're going to find is, oh, sorry, here it is. This is the announcement. HBO is putting up the girls on YouTube first. What they're going to find is there's a lot of competition. It's not just from Netflix. It's also from, obviously, Amazon commissioning original programming, Hulu, Microsoft even for their Xbox Live service. NBC and Fox are now putting pilots on the internet first. I think this is a really smart idea. It's like a cost way to test out a concept, get some audience feedback, build some buzz. Your other cable brethren are out there, of course, assiduously posting whatever video they can get permission from the cable distributor to put up on the internet. And then all the studios here in town have an originals group as well. So there's kind of a cavalcade of companies rushing in to this opportunity to go direct to consumer. You might be surprised to know newspapers are publishing more video than TV companies. And if you combine newspapers and magazines together, it's almost twice as much video online as traditional broadcasters are putting, which is kind of an amazing stat. I didn't know that. And of course, there are 20,000 sites on the internet besides YouTube where people are posting video. This is also kind of mind-numbing. 20,000 sites for people to post video. Just about every blog now has turned itself into a video blog. Any news, any kind of news outlet on the internet of any substance has video. Individuals can do this as well. So the barriers to entry are so low. Remember when Glenn Beck got kicked off of Fox and everybody was like, good riddance, he's gone. But it turns out he said, no problem, TV's over, I'm going to go launch my own direct-to-consumer channel. And amazingly, he got 300,000 people to sign up overnight, which shows you that there's no upper boundary on crazy. Like, you can get a lot of people to part with their hard-earned cash. These two comedians, this is Louis C.K. and this is Jim Gaffigan, they both did something pretty cool about a year and a half ago where they did their own special, what you would have done in the old days on HBO or Showtime, one of those comedian specials. Louis C.K. started out. He wanted to do something to raise money for returning veterans from the war, and so he said, I'm going to do a special event. So he rented his own theater, he paid for it. He spent about $250,000 for an individual person. That's a lot of money, right? So that was a pretty big gamble. He wasn't sure if he was going to make that money back. And he didn't put any encryption or DRM. He just basically posted the file. He said, if you pay $5, you can download the file, you can rip it, you can burn it, you can put it on whatever device you want. Please don't torrent it. That's all. He wrote a really nice personal note that was on his website. And he made his money back in the first weekend, and within a week, he'd made $1 million profit on the thing. Not huge numbers, but this is the beginning, right? This is the early days. It's kind of amazing. Now, a lot of comedians are doing that. How many people know PewDiePie? Okay, great. I'm glad some people do. First of all, it's like, who? I was going to share this with you. Right before the holidays, I was looking around. I was like, wow, that's an amazing stat. December 19, he had 18 million subscribers to his channel on YouTube. But then I just saw this week. Oh, he just broke 20 million. He's now, his growth rate is accelerating. He's now adding a new user, a new subscriber every second. If you haven't seen it, brace yourself. It's definitely not TV. I mean, it's this weird new internet video phenomenon. The guy plays video games and makes snarky commentary, kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000 on top of a video game. It's really funny. He's incredibly charming. He has great talent. You couldn't do this on TV, but it works great on the internet. And actually, there are a lot of these YouTube stars, and they're making millions of dollars a year. Jenna Marbles is making like $5 or $6 million a year. Jenna Marbles, I mean, really? You look at her stuff, you're like, it's not even good enough for like local access broadcast or cable. We wouldn't even put it on television, but nevertheless, it works. There's an audience in huge numbers watching this stuff. So the companies that are rolling this up, make her well, they're part of your family. Good for you. That's a smart strategic move. Go get their DNA. See what they're like. You're going to notice they operate with much lower overhead, right? And it's also kind of like controlled chaos, I find, when I visit there. It's like there's lots of things in motion. They're throwing a lot of stuff against the wall. They don't quite know what will stick. They have competition, Machinima and Full Screen. Machinima got on a lot of people's radars about a year and a half ago. In 2012, they let people know that they had 200 million unique viewers in their audience worldwide. And by that point, the Debovaz brothers who started, they said to me, every motion picture company in town, they are the first place they call when there's a new action movie coming out. Because it's the only platform where you can reach boys of that demographic in every country. And of course, these guys, they're open for business. So they're like, hey, you know what? We can geo-block that content until the day and date the picture's coming out, and we'll bring out the content with the date of the show, of the film release, so they can actually help. They're a really good partner. They really know how to super serve their partners. So let me tell you about Angry Birds. Angry Birds, you're going, wait a minute, it's a game. Why are you talking about, why did we just shift gears into a game? Well, no, check this out. This is amazing. Who your competition is. The field of competition is much broader than you might expect. So Angry Birds, you all know, it's a game that has almost 2 billion downloads on mobile phones. And any given month, about 300 million people play the game. Any given day, 30 million people play the game. So it's a very popular game. I was in Finland recently, and I know the founders. And so I went to visit them, but they weren't there. They were in China. I said, what are you guys doing in China? And they said, Robert, we think Disney does not understand China. I said, what? I said, well, Disney built one theme park. China is a big country. They have one theme park. We decide we're going to go there and do it right. We're building 100 theme parks. They're building 100 Angry Birds theme parks. These guys are becoming Disney so fast, it's unbelievable. And what they did just a few months ago is very smart. They pushed an update out to their phone, out to all the phones, the 275 million active users that they have, and updated that phone. So now there isn't just a play button for the game, there's also a watch button. And overnight, they became one of the biggest digital video distributors in the mobile business. And they introduced Angry Birds tunes. This is what competition is like in the space. Competition comes from unexpected quarters, and it happens overnight. Rethink your money. You have to rethink the way you get paid. And this is really tough. As I said earlier, John Malone's phrase, right? There's never been a better profit maximization strategy than paid TV. That's why everybody in the ecosystem works so hard to preserve it. So here's Horace Daydu. He's an analyst for Simco. You might know him. He writes a lot about internet and media. And he published this tweet, which was super controversial, so a lot of people retweeted it and commented back in a hostile way. He said, the media guys have it all wrong. That old Jeff Zucker phrase of digital pennies versus analog dollars, whatever the phrase was. He said, bits are big bucks. Here's his chart. He said, they're just not paying for your bits. They're just not paying for TV bits. This is data from the App Store, and you can see that gross revenue from app is where the money is actually happening. So there's tremendous innovation, not just in content or format or audience, but also in business model. Where I said the TV industry hasn't really evolved. You've had the same business model for 30 years. It hasn't really changed at all. But in the internet world, where there's just ferocious competition, it evolves so quickly. So in the gaming world, you have free-to-play games, which is a crazy idea. For the game, this is what hurt EA so badly. They missed the curve. Free games, they're not in the business of selling free games. They're in the business of selling a shiny disc that you put in your PlayStation or your Xbox, and they charge you $50 for that. The idea of giving a game away free and then charging people on usage is a completely unorthodox concept. That's where all the money's being made in games right now. It is a booming field. And there are games produced by companies like the guys in Finland. Supercell is a company that's doing about $5 million a day on a single game. And it's got free to play, so that means 80 or 90% of the people play for free. Very few convert to paid, but they can make a business out of that. Mobile payments is another business, so you can actually use your mobile phone to make real-world transactions. Buying cash, virtual currency inside of a game world or inside of an entertainment experience. YouTube's TrueView is a great innovation, right? The idea that you only watch the ads that you really care about, and if the ad doesn't appeal to you, skip it. They don't care. They're okay with that, and it's great feedback for the advertiser. It's like that campaign didn't work very well. Good, now they know. And by the way, some of those ads they're evolving really quickly. So like in the first 5 seconds, they have to get your attention, and they're doing a great job of that. So it's worth paying attention to TrueView, Twitter Amplify, Instagram Video. I mean, there's just constant innovation in this space, new ways to monetize, new ways to make money. One of the things I've noticed is that traditional media companies focus on revenue maximization. That makes sense. You're a mature business, right? You got to run it. You're constantly sweating. How do we maximize our revenue? But in a fast growth medium, they don't worry about that metric. They worry about audience. Because it's growing so fast, they're like, remove all the barriers away from the audience. So audience maximization is the name of the game. And that's where paid apps and free apps are so important. This chart's a little old. It's from 2012. If I were to show you this chart today, this shows you the percentage of free and paid apps. Today, this paid portion wouldn't even be 3%. Paid apps are finished. And that happened in the last 3 years. It's astonishing. So the pace of evolution in this space is extraordinarily quick. These are the founders of WhatsApp. You probably don't have it, but your kids probably do. And they hate advertising. They left Yahoo because they hated all the advertising. Yahoo is basically just a giant support system for internet advertising. And they didn't like that very much. They said, we're going to start a business that will never take advertising. They don't raise outside money. They charge you like $1 for the app. That's it, 150 million users. You're going to hear a lot about native apps or native advertising as we talk about these digital platforms. And what that means is, instead of taking something that worked on TV and then sticking it on a tablet or a phone or a computer, which doesn't really work very well, now the advertising agencies are having to think a little bit harder about what experience makes sense in a fully interactive medium. This is a company in New York that was founded by a friend of mine that blows my mind. It's the coolest thing in the world. He's creating video apps. So it's an app inside of the video. So as you can see, here's a video, but you can actually touch the screen, and there's something interactive that pops up, and you can play with it, you can mess around with it, you can bookmark it for later if you just want to watch the clip. That can be an ad, that can be an offer, that can be an introduction, that can be a chance to join a loyalty program and earn some points and so forth. Built into the video stream, that's native advertising for a tablet, the screen that's designed for people to touch it, of course, right? I want to touch that screen, it invites a touch. Here's another one, a company from Finland called Kiosk. And they are setting up in New York. They're inventing a brand new kind of advertising network, but actually it's focused on commerce. So what they're doing is inside of games and video on tablets, they're introducing a store. So right in the middle of the video, you can stop, you can touch, and any video clip or any game can be a storefront. This is really powerful. We tried to do this back in the days of interactive TV in the late 90s, and it was just impossible, right? We called it T-commerce or TV commerce or television, all these stupid terms that never worked out, because with a remote control, you're not going to like click, and you're not going to stop the show to like try on some input the size of shirt that you need. It's just a completely dumb idea on a television. But on a tablet, the tablet invites a touch. You touch, the video pauses, you can play around with the thing, and that's actually kind of fun. It feels game-like and inviting. So it's actually worth paying attention to these things. There's tremendous innovation happening. And for those who find this stuff challenging, you need to understand the way disruptors think. They don't really care about the economics of the pay TV business. Disruptors aren't responsible for your economics. That's what makes them disruptive. So if some of the things I'm talking about are unorthodox or challenging, or maybe things you couldn't do in the old media sphere, well, that's what makes them unorthodox. Rethink your ecosystem. This is kind of like the main message here. So the app economy is the big thing. We keep hearing about it, and it is quite staggering. Apple's had 60 billion apps cumulatively downloaded since they introduced the App Store in 2007. It's kind of a staggering figure. And if you think about that across all these new devices, all these smart appliances that are coming into the home, they're all going to have an app store. Everything's going to have an app store. So we're going to get in this world where people click to add new functionality to their device. They're going to expect that, right? That's going to be built into customer expectations. So TV companies, the big broadcasters, they're not slow to adapt to this. They've all built apps. But what they find is really disturbing. When these prestige brands show up on a tablet, they're parked right next to these brands, and this really causes some cognitive dissonance for the broadcasters, because these are like the flagship broadcast brands. They really have a great deal of pride still. They're right next to you guys and these cable and satellite distributors and local TV stations, and then all these interlopers from the internet. Who are these guys? And then all this stuff down here they never even heard of, but yet they're all on the exact same shelf space. There's no prestige given to their brands. They don't have any kind of priority placement, and that causes tremendous confusion. It's important to understand that when you create an app, what you're doing is you're turning TV into an app on somebody else's platform. And I want to speak a little bit about that, because the future of the media industry in digital is going to be defined by brand new control points. And these are things you need to understand and master as you move into this. So back when Dick Parsons was the president, before he became the CEO of Time Warner, this is back in the 90s, he said when value is moving up and down the chain, you have to hold the whole chain. That was the whole concept at the heart of that Time Warner AOL merger back in the day. And every big company in those days wanted to try to control the whole value chain. That was the idea of synergy in the 90s. We have a different concept now. So we have completely new value control points. These are the traditional value control points. If you want to make a movie, for instance, you have to get talent. You got to go to an agency. That's what they control. They can lock off that piece. Financing, that's what a studio does. The releasing studio does the distribution and the marketing. So those are like the value control points if you're trying to get a film released. In digital media, those don't pertain. Those are not the most powerful control points. And this is one of the things that causes so much trouble for media companies when they try to operate the same old way in this new medium. There are different value control points. Tools, monetization techniques, platforms, and tools for discovery. Let me explain what I mean, because I think this is a fairly important point here. If you look at every major successful internet company right now that is growing with users who are contributing content, who are building kind of a combined media and social business, which would be most of them, you'll find that they have these four things in common. Tools for the creation of content, and they have professional tools for their partners, APIs for developers and toolkits for developers, but they also have consumer-grade tools, so anybody can post something or share or do an update or post a photo. Then they have a different set of tools for discovery. And the really smart companies have leveraged users to drive discovery. That's what the whole social thing is about, and curation of content and so forth. Then they have a way to monetize. Well, this is what attracts all that talent, all the professional talent. They have a way to monetize. And the really successful companies are the ones that are best at monetization. And they share the wealth with the developers who bring great content to them. And then they have ways for people to consume, and typically that's a device of some sort. So let's map a big company that we all know onto this. So let's take a look at Apple. You look at Apple, you go, oh yeah, when I buy an Apple computer, I have all these free apps that come with it, right? And those apps are really quite good. iPhoto, it's an awesome experience. If you have a camera, you plug it in, it tells you what kind of camera it is, it starts pulling the photos in automatically. I love this, right? They make it easy for me to create content. They also have a whole developer program, and you'll find every company that's serious in this space has a robust developer program for professional companies. On the discovery side, Apple has many ways to discover content. I put the browser there, and Siri, because Siri is really intended to be their thrust against Google. That's their competitive thrust to Google. In the future, as we move into devices that aren't a computer, the keyboard, they believe that search discovery is going to be driven by voice, and that's why they're so focused on Siri. In terms of monetization, Apple is the giant in the space. They do know how to monetize content. I'm not sure they monetize content on terms that you would like. The music industry isn't very happy with the deal they did 10 years ago with them, but nevertheless, they monetize better than anyone else. And of course, they make gorgeous machines that we'd love to buy to consume content. And increasingly, those devices are becoming content consumption devices. So that's kind of like their ecosystem. Let me give you another example. Here's Google. What do you know? It maps exactly to the same thing. So they have a whole bunch of free apps, Google Apps. They have a really robust developer program. For discovery, they have, of course, search. They're the kings of discovery. But they also have Google+, which is their counterpart to Facebook. And Google Now, which if you have an Android phone, is actually a fantastic experience. It's a predictive experience. It sort of knows what you're doing and where you're going, and it looks at your address book and your email and your appointments, and it tells you what you might be interested in as you make that journey. In terms of monetization, until recently, they weren't as good at monetizing content on a paid basis, but they're the absolute kings of the hill when it comes to advertising on the internet. They still dominate, and in mobile, same thing. In terms of consumption, they now match Apple device for device with much lower price points. So they're going to commoditize hardware. Apple tries to prioritize it. That's where Apple takes their margin. So what you can see is that this framework is the same. We could map it onto every company that you can think of, Facebook, Microsoft, Amazon, and so forth. They all have the same strategy, but there's actually room for some strategic diversity. They're not doing the exact same thing. So for instance, as I was mentioning a minute ago, Apple's going to prioritize hardware, and they're going to commoditize everything else in that bundle. Google is going to prioritize advertising. But the new value bundle looks like this. This is where the value bundle is. There's a device, a piece of hardware that has network access. And on top of that, there's a platform, an operating system, and some sort of environment for creating apps. And then on top of that, apps and content. That's your new value bundle. If you control that whole stack, you can decide where to take your margin. This is the same strategy that Richard Parsons laid out for Time Warner about 15 years ago, but now it's applied in the digital domain. So companies like Google and Facebook now, they're going to commoditize content in order to drive advertising revenue, and that's exactly what they do. Last point for you, I know this is long. Rethink your power structure. This is a little bit, as I was thinking about this presentation, I was thinking about my time at Sony Pictures a long time ago. When I got there in the mid-90s, there was a clear power structure. There was a pecking order. At the top of the pyramid was the movie studio. And then you had the broadcast TV guys. And then you had the cable guys. The guys are making cable TV shows. And then way down at the bottom, off the lot, someplace down the street, a mile away, was this little underfunded internet group, right? So that was the old power pyramid. But something kind of amazing has happened in the last 10 years. If you think about who's running your holding company, Time Warner right now, the cable guys are on top. And it's because you're driving 60, 70% of the revenue in the business. So naturally now, the media conglomerate has inverted that pyramid, right? So the TV guys are running the thing. And motion pictures, it's weird. It's like this lost leader that builds a library that gets monetized someplace else. And so it's now not the PowerPoint in the company. And then you still have kind of down here this piece, which nobody's quite figured out where it fits in the equation. I'm going to get there in a second. So this is a big takeaway. Films become a subset of television. And when you look at 4K, and now they're already introducing 8K TVs, you're going to see that the resolution of the TV set in the home is the same as the resolution of that digital screen in the theater. So truly, film has become a subset. It's just a piece of television. It's a feeder for TV. Okay, so now we're back to this pyramid. Now there's this new thing, mobile video. We're back to the beginning of my talk, too. So smartphones are growing at a rate now that you really need to pay attention to. There's about between 1.5 and 2 billion smartphones on the planet. There's 7 billion mobile phones total. But going forward in the future, they're all going to be smartphones. I'll show you what I mean in a second. This year, 2014, we're going to sell 1 billion smartphones. But the thing that's growing even faster than smartphones is tablets. And it's completely decimating the computer business. So people are migrating en masse to mobile platforms. This is what you must pay attention to. This is so important. This is a mega trend. No surprise, mobile data is growing at an unprecedented rate. The light blue here is mobile data, and the dark blue is fixed line, like your broadband connection connected to your PC. Here's what's amazing about smartphones. Smartphones and tablets, these mobile devices, they've doubled the amount of time, and this is consistent across every country where they get smartphones and tablets. The amount of time you spend on the internet doubles. Think about it, of course, right? In the old days, you had a computer in your den at home, and you get home, you might spend an hour on the thing, but then you'd want to go watch TV, and very few people brought the broadband into their TV, into their living room. The smartphone opens up all these new pockets of time in the day. At breakfast this morning, we were talking about that phenomenon of this newfound time, these little sort of on-the-go moments where people are in the gym and they're watching video on their tablet or their smartphone or something. So we've all found ways to add another hour each day to watching video. So this is another reason why this is important for a media company. It's like somebody just opened up a whole new window. And mobile's share of video is growing. So it doubled last year. That's important. Mobile video is growing very quickly. It's still very tiny. And in terms of advertising revenue, mobile, of all the ad money in the world, it's like 3%. It's teeny, teeny, tiny stuff, but it's growing very quickly. So watch the rate of growth. That's what to pay attention to. In terms of time spent, this is the one you need to look at. In terms of time spent, here's television, 168 minutes. Mobile apps, 127 minutes, so it's already surpassed all these other behaviors, reading magazines, browsing the web, and so forth. So mobile is growing at an unprecedented rate. And only a third of the world's population is online. The next billion and the next billion after that, they're not going to have desktop computers and OTT boxes and game consoles and all that stuff. It's over. They're going to just migrate to the mobile phone. They're going to start with a smartphone. The kind of smartphone they'll have will be one like this. It won't be an iPhone that costs $600. It'll be one of these. This is a Firefox phone. It's an open source phone running the Firefox operating system. Who knew? Who knew they even had an operating system? These phones are now available. They're not here yet, I think, but they are available in Europe, in Eastern Europe, for $65. $65 smartphone. Okay, it's not an iPhone, but it's pretty good. You think they're going to steal a little bit of market share away from Apple and Android? This is an unbelievable story. $65. At that price, and that's the launch price. Watch when it drops. They'll be disposable phones eventually. You'll get them for your kids. So that's why analysts can project out and say, like, today, we're consuming about 13 gigabytes, and a lot of that is video and media. But by 2017, which isn't really that far off, that's going to double from 13 to 26 gigabytes. But in the future, they expect us to consume about the equivalent of 30 hours a month, 30 hours of HD TV on our mobile devices in the future. That's going to be a direct competitor. That may be far out in the future. You have some time. This is not like happening imminently. But the point is you need to start taking steps now to make sure that your company is positioned to be there, that they're watching your content, not somebody else's. So I think in the future, it's not unreasonable to think that we might see a new power pyramid where everything's inverted, where the growth is here, where the numbers of people are, and these businesses start to diminish. So film's a subset of TV, and soon, perhaps, it's not too bold to think that ultimately digital might be the thing, the master thing above it all, and everything else will be a subset of that. So new media requires new attitudes. I really appreciate you taking the time to listen to me this morning. I hope this was helpful for you. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.